You know how people say you see red flags, but you're just too deep in it to care? Yeah. That was me. 3 years ago. My name's Marcus. I was 33 when I met Sierra. She was 30, smart, witty, and honestly, just stunning. Not. Girl next door. Cute, runway model in a coffee shop stunning. We met on a dating app that was supposed to be for people serious about commitment. Not a hookup scene. And that's what I wanted. Stability. Connection. Something real. When we first matched, it was all late-night calls and sarcastic banter. She had this dry sense of humor I couldn't get enough of. We liked the same obscure indie films, hated the same cliches, and somehow clicked in this weird, uncanny way. I thought, this might actually be it. We started dating exclusively within a month. I was cautious, sure. But she had a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. But here's the thing about someone like Sierra. When they walk into a room, everyone notices. And not just notice, men would trip over themselves to compliment her, flirt, or slide into her DMs. She didn't seem to encourage it, at least not at first, but she didn't shut it down either. It was hard. I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous, insecure one. I tried to trust her. But the seed was planted. And it started growing the night she made a joke about hall passes. We were lying on the couch, just chatting about nothing, when she said, "If you could hook up with any celebrity, 0 consequences, would it be?" She laughed, tossed out a name. Then added, with this casual smirk, "I don't think most guys would say no to me anyway." That sentence hit me like a glass of cold water. Not because she was wrong, she was gorgeous, but because it felt real. Not a joke. A quiet confession. Like she already knew her power. I laughed it off. What else could I do? But I didn't forget. And from there, things shifted. She started coming home late. Not crazy late, but just off. She used to text me when she was wrapping up at work. Now it was, "Oh, sorry. Lost track of time." No details. Just vibes. When I asked, she'd snap, "Why are you checking up on me? You don't trust me?" Classic deflection. I backed off. I hate conflict. Always have. But the gut feeling? It didn't go away. Then one night, she came home after 9:30 p.m., said she ran into a friend, and had drinks. Gave me this vague story about an old coworker. No name. No details. And I knew. Not guessed. Not assumed. Knew. That was the moment everything snapped into place. The shift in tone. The lack of eye contact. The rehearsed stories. It all aligned. She was cheating. I couldn't prove it. But I didn't need to. I could feel it. I didn't want to accuse her without evidence, and I didn't want to be told I was imagining things. So I made a plan. And it started with a search bar. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not friends. Not co-workers. Not even my brother, who'd warned me about Sierra's too good to be true vibe early on. I reached out to a private investigator named Drew. Found him through a Reddit thread, actually, one of those no-nonsense guys who specializes in infidelity verification. Not shady, not aggressive. Just discreet and brutally efficient. We met in a cafe 3 towns over. I slid him a retainer, photos of Sierra, her work schedule, and a list of girls' nights she'd mentioned recently that felt off. Drew didn't promise fireworks. He said it could take time. That people like Sierra were smart, careful. But 4 days later, he texted me one sentence. "I've got something. We should talk." We met again. He laid out the photos on a laptop screen like it was a PowerPoint. There she was. Sierra. Walking into a cocktail bar, not near her office. Not on the way home. Not alone. A guy I didn't recognize had his hand on the small of her back. 2 more shots showed her, and the same guy leaving together. Arms linked. Laughing. Last photo? She kissing him in the parking garage. Not a peck. A full-on, leaning into a kiss. My chest went still. Not broken, quiet. Because when you suspect something long enough, and finally see it, it doesn't hurt the way you think it will. It just ends something. Drew offered to keep digging. You want names? Background? I can keep surveillance. I shook my head. I didn't need names. I didn't want to spend another minute chasing details about someone who'd thrown me away like a backup plan. I just wanted out, with dignity. The next morning, Sierra woke up like it was any other day. Kissed me on the cheek. Asked if we were out of oat milk. I told her I'd pick some up. I didn't. Instead, I spent the entire day at a lawyer's office. We weren't married, but we'd been engaged for 5 months. Shared an apartment, furniture, and bills. I'd paid for most of it. I asked the lawyer what my options were. He gave me a checklist. That night, I cooked dinner like normal. Set the table. Smiled. And after we ate, I slid the manila envelope across the table. Inside was a termination of lease agreement with her name removed, a copy of the PI's report, and a printed photo of her kissing the guy in the garage. She stared at it like she didn't understand what language it was in. Then she laughed. You really hired someone to follow me? I didn't answer. She tossed the envelope down. This is insane. You're insane. You just ruined the best thing you'll ever have. Do you honestly think you'll find someone better than me? She said it like a curse. Like she was casting a spell to make sure I stayed small forever. But it didn't land. Because I wasn't sad. I wasn't even mad. I was done. I don't need better, I said. I just need real. I stood up. She stayed seated. Speechless for once. And I walked out. Not because I had somewhere to be, but because I wasn't going to spend one more minute proving my worth to someone who thought betrayal was a game she couldn't lose. After Sierra left, the apartment felt bigger. Not cleaner. Not emptier. Just quiet. Like the tension had evaporated and finally made room for air. I boxed up her things, every piece of jewelry, designer clutch, perfume bottle. Left it all stacked neatly by the front door. She sent a friend to pick it up a week later. No note. No call. Just a transaction. I didn't ask questions. Didn't stalk her social media. Didn't text why or how long. I didn't want the answers, not because I couldn't handle them, but because I already had them. Some people cheat because they're bored. Some because they're impulsive. Sierra? She cheated because she believed she was unreplaceable. She'd always said things like, people don't walk away from someone like me. And I believed it. For a while. I spent the next few months alone, not lonely, but alone. No dating. No. I'm gonna get ripped and show her what she lost. Gym montages. I went inward. Therapy twice a month. Journaling. Late night drives with no destination. I cleaned out my contacts. I left the apartment and moved into a smaller place closer to the lake. Less square footage. More light. A kitchen that actually got sun in the morning. I bought groceries like a person who mattered. Started cooking again. Playing guitar again. Slowly, quietly, I started becoming me again. And it felt good. Then, about 3 months after the breakup, my friend Nate sent me a screenshot. It was Sierra. Public profile. Soft lighting. Perfect hair. New guy. Caption. Sometimes you have to let go of average to make room for extraordinary. I just stared at it. Because there it was, that same arrogance. That same smug belief that she'd upgraded. That I was the warm-up act. Nate texted me. She thinks she's the main character, huh? I laughed. Because here's the truth. She had replaced me. Quickly. Publicly. Sloppily. But I hadn't been replaced. I'd been released. And that made all the difference. I didn't post anything in return. Didn't respond. But a quiet shift had started. While she was busy posting quotes and selfies, I was building something. Something real. A new job opportunity opened up, senior marketing strategist at a firm I'd respected for years. I took a shot. Got it. A week into the role, I pitched a rebrand campaign that landed us a massive client. The kind of deal that turns heads. Suddenly, I was being invited to speak at conferences. Clients asked for me by name. My LinkedIn lit up. Offers came in. People remembered me, not as Sierra's fiancée, Not as the guy who got cheated on, but as a professional who delivered. And through it all, I stayed quiet. Let my work speak. Because Sierra had spent her time performing. I'd spent mine building. And soon enough, that difference? It was impossible to ignore. 6 months after the breakup, I got invited to speak at a business summit in Chicago. It was one of those flashy but substantive industry events. Hundreds of professionals, panels, networking mixers, media booths. I was scheduled to present a case study on digital storytelling and brand recovery. Kind of ironic, given where I'd come from. I didn't think twice about accepting. Booked the hotel, prepped my slides, packed light. The night before my panel, there was a rooftop welcome reception. Open bar. Light music. Just the right amount of small talk. I was mid-conversation with a marketing director when I heard a voice behind me. Marcus? It was her. Sierra. Hair curled like always, lips glossed, holding a champagne flute like she was born doing it. My stomach didn't drop. My heart didn't race. I just looked at her. Like someone glancing at an old yearbook photo. She smiled. Wow. I didn't know you'd be here. I gave her a polite nod. Likewise. Turns out, she was there with her new boyfriend, well, now ex-boyfriend, as she casually let slip. Said she was rebuilding her brand. Said it with the same smug softness she used to say. I could do better if I wanted to. I didn't ask what happened. She filled the silence anyway. He wasn't what I thought. Not as motivated. I guess I was chasing potential again. I almost laughed. Because that's what she'd once said about me. That I was full of potential. But too comfortable. That she needed someone exciting. Now she was standing in front of me, watching me network with CEOs, prepping to speak on a stage while she handed out business cards with a freelance title and a made-up agency name. I could tell she wanted something. Maybe closure, maybe a reaction, maybe just to prove she still had a place in my world. So I gave her the one thing she never offered me. Grace. Hope things work out for you. I said. Take care of yourself. Then I turned back to my conversation. And that was it. No fireworks. No revenge. Just a quiet, decisive moment where I finally saw her for who she was. And realized I'd never belonged to her chaos. I belonged to myself. The next morning I gave my talk. The room was packed. Questions were sharp. Feedback is even sharper. Afterward, a woman from a major firm came up and said, I've followed your work since the rebrand. Your growth has been insane. What's your secret? I smiled. I stopped investing in people who wanted to dim me. That gave me everything I needed to shine. She laughed. Took a card. And just like that, my story wasn't about Sierra anymore. It was about me. 3 days after the summit, she messaged me. Not on Instagram. Not on LinkedIn. Email. Subject line. Can we talk? I hovered over it for 10 minutes before opening. The body was short. I've been thinking about what you said. About taking care of myself. I just want you to know, I'm sorry. For everything. I wasn't in a good place. I didn't know how to handle stability when I had it. You didn't deserve what I did. If you're open to a conversation, I'd like the chance to apologize properly. Maybe over coffee? No expectations. I sat back and exhaled. It was a message a part of me had once begged for. Not to get her back, but to feel like I hadn't been crazy. To feel seen. But reading it now? It felt calculated. Because I knew Sierra. Knew how her ego worked. Knew how she only ever reached out when she felt herself slipping off someone else's radar. She didn't apologize when I found the photo. She didn't apologize when I packed her things. She didn't even apologize when she posted about upgrading from average. She only did it now, after she saw who I'd become without her. I didn't reply. Didn't even mark it as read. Instead, I archived the email. That's the thing about people like Sierra, they think, I'm sorry, is a reset button. But I don't play games where the scoreboard disappears every time they're losing. 2 weeks later, I got a DM from one of her friends. A girl I barely knew, someone I remembered from one brunch years ago, who now suddenly wanted to check in, and see how I was doing. Sierra's fingerprints were all over it. I left it on read. Then came the subtweet. On Sierra's public profile. Some people only find their worth when someone else hands it to them. But that's not real healing. That's codependency in a suit. No names. No tags. But the timing wasn't subtle. I laughed. Because the truth is, I had found my worth. Not through a new relationship. Not through revenge. Through removal. I'd stopped negotiating my self-respect just to avoid being alone. And when I finally let the silence grow between us, I realized it wasn't loneliness. It was peace. Kay, a friend of mine from the summit, saw the tweet and sent me a screenshot. This about you? If so, she's pressed. I texted back. She's not used to being a footnote. And that's exactly what she was now. Not a villain. Not a muse. Just a poorly written character who exited the plot before the story got good. I used to think healing would come in some big, cinematic moment. Like I'd run into Sierra again, dressed sharper than ever, delivering some devastating one-liner while she stood there looking regretful and wrecked. But that's not how real growth looks. It's quieter. It's getting a good night's sleep without replaying old arguments in your head. It's walking past the places you once broke down, and not flinching. It's saying no to people who once made you question your value, and not feeling the need to explain why. That was my life now. And it felt good. The marketing firm I worked for landed a massive project with a global wellness brand, rebranding, audience segmentation, cross-platform strategy. It was a beast. I got tapped to lead the creative direction. At first, I thought they were kidding. Then they handed me the brief and said, "It's yours." This wasn't just a step up, it was a leap. I spent weeks buried in mock-ups, data points, and trend analysis. And during one of our internal collaboration sessions, I met Elise. She wasn't loud. She wasn't trying to own the room. She just knew her lane, analytics, user behavior, market psychology, and ran it like a pro. She was confident in a way that didn't need praise. The first time we talked, we were the last two in the conference room, still workshopping slides at 7 p.m. She looked up from her laptop and said, "You're not just winging this. You care. That's rare." I told her I used to wing everything, until I realized I was always one half-hearted decision away from losing it all. She nodded. We didn't flirt. We didn't dive into trauma dumping. We just worked well together. And then one day, she sent me a calendar invite, not for a meeting, but for coffee. No emojis. No weird innuendo. Just, "If you ever want a break from Google Docs, I know a great cafe." We met that Friday. Talked for 2 hours. Nothing about exes. Nothing about drama. We talked about books, travel, imposter syndrome, and the weirdness of corporate language. She told me how she once left a 6-figure job because the culture made her feel small, even when she was winning. I told her that sounded familiar. It didn't turn into a relationship, not right away. But it turned into something real. A connection without pressure. A conversation without code switching. A feeling I hadn't felt in a long time. Stability, without boredom. And all the while, Sierra kept posting. Inspirational captions. Vague subtweets. The kind of content people post when they're trying to outgrow something they never actually outgrew. She followed me again. I didn't follow back. Because I was finally living the kind of life I used to hope she'd help me build. Only now, I didn't need her. I didn't even need the memory of her. It came on a Sunday. Late afternoon. That quiet time of the week when most people are meal prepping or doom scrolling or trying to forget Monday exists. My phone buzzed, unknown number. One of those area codes I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, I saw the transcript come through. It was Sierra. "Hey. I know it's been a long time, but I've been thinking. About everything. About how things ended. I don't expect a response. I just wanted to say I never stopped caring. I didn't know how to handle what we had. I sabotaged it. I know that now. I'm not asking for anything. I just hope you're okay." It would have been powerful, if it were real. But the timing? Too perfect. She'd just seen my company's rebrand campaign featured on a major design site. My name had been in the credits. LinkedIn had lit up. Mutuals were reposting. And Sierra? She was still posting vague quotes and discount codes for off-brand skincare lines. I knew this wasn't remorse. It was relevant. She didn't want to fix things, she wanted to reinsert herself into the narrative. To remind me she'd been there first. That she was part of the origin story. And maybe she was. But that didn't mean she had a place in the chapters that followed. I didn't reply. Didn't forward it to friends. Didn't post a "Look who came crawling back" story. Because the truth? I wasn't interested in winning. I was interested in moving on. And I already had. Later that week, I was walking with Elise downtown after a client dinner. We passed a little bookstore. She pulled me inside, said, "You need this." It was a hardcover journal with a quote embossed in gold. "You do not have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm." She didn't know the full Sierra story. But somehow, she still understood. I bought the journal. Wrote one sentence on the first page. "I don't need an apology to let go." And with that, the last thread tying me to Sierra finally snapped. Not because she was evil. Not because I needed revenge. But because nothing about her version of me was true anymore. She thought I'd never find someone like her. And she was right. I found better. There was never a big finale. No dramatic confrontation. No movie-worthy moment where she sobbed in the rain, begging for one more chance. Just distance. Time. And choices made without her in mind. That's the part no one tells you about moving on. It's not loud. It's not posted. It's not a quote you share at 2 a.m. with a moody filter. It's waking up and realizing you haven't thought about them in days. It's catching your reflection in the mirror and liking what you see. It's hearing their name in conversation and not feeling your chest tighten. It's quiet. Complete. And beautiful. A year after Sierra walked out of my life, I spoke at a leadership summit in Austin. Room full of people I once would have felt too small to stand in front of. After my talk, someone came up and said, "You carry yourself like you've already lived the worst chapter." I laughed. I have. And I rewrote the ending. That night, I sat on the hotel balcony with Elise. We weren't official. We didn't need labels. What we had wasn't curated, it was consistent. Grounded. No performance. I told her the full story, Sierra, the cheating, the slow rebuild. She didn't judge me. Didn't say, "I would have burned her life down." Just listened. Then she said, "You didn't get bitter. You just got clear. That's rare." She was right. I didn't want to be the guy who weaponized his heartbreak. I wanted to be the guy who transformed it. And I was. I built a life with clean edges. Clear boundaries. Soft mornings. Real friends. Purposeful work. And Sierra? She became the person I learned from, not the person I chased. There's power in that. Because some people walk out thinking they've shattered you. But all they did was break open a version of you that needed to be rebuilt. So yeah? She cheated. She said I'd never find someone like her. She was absolutely right. And thank God for that.